Shalom, shalom, Israel. Can everybody hear me all right? If I can get a one in the chat, if y'all can hear me all right. I get a one in the chat if y'all can hear me all right. Okay, the water. Shalom, Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shabbarakatah, Salaki. Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shabbarakatam to the brothers. Yahweh Shemor Alathan, Shem Yahweh Shah to the sisters. This is the Salaki. We are the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge, started out at 1 West 125th Street. Under Commanding General Yohana, since 1969, we've been teaching the truth of the Bible. We are not affiliated with any other Israelite or Christian group. This is Monday night's history class. And as you all may have been able to see from the title, we are going to get into Juneteenth. We're going to get into some Juneteenth history. Today is the official federal holiday that our oppressor designated a few years back. Who has some familiarity with Juneteenth? Meaning, even before it was a federal holiday, federal paid holiday. Who has some knowledge of what Juneteenth represents? May have been to a Juneteenth event at some point. Okay, all right. Maria says Khan. All right, so you had some familiarity with it. Who else has some familiarity with it, or who else was totally surprised? Maybe when this was signed in and did not have an understanding of what the day represented. All right. Trooper Salaki Officer Yagadar and Trooper Kazaki both said Khan. All right. All right, we got a sister from Richmond, Virginia checking in. All right, shalom, sis. Feel free to continue to participate in the chat, sis. That's what we do in the class. Participation is definitely encouraged. But we're gonna keep going. So we're gonna kind of go over it though. We're gonna get into some history just in case there's anybody who may be watching who may not be familiar. So obviously, before we go there, we're gonna start further back, right? We're gonna first start. Okay, shalom, sis. Rib Officer Yagadar is in the building. Says she learned about it in college from my down south roommate. Okay, come. All right, so we're gonna go a little farther back, right? So at the time, there was a war going on. We all know that was a civil war, right? So there's often debates about what the Civil War was fought over. So who can give me some of these answers as far as what people say the Civil War was fought over? There's two general answers, depending on which side, which nation you are. There's one true answer that people like to debate it. Okay, goods. Slavery. All right, that's one of the main answers that people say. That's one side in a given debate. All right. All right. Says they lie and say it was about the slaves. Con. Triple Kazaki says they say the Civil War was fought over freeing the blacks, which is not true. Absolutely not true. So, how do I want to get to this? Well, all right, the sister says, I know about Juneteenth. It's supposed to be about us being free from slavery and segregation. Not so much segregation, sis, but definitely about freedom from slavery. But we're gonna get into it some more tonight. But I appreciate your participation, sis. So it was and it was not about slavery, meaning this. So the Civil War began with states deciding they no longer wanted to be part of the Union, right? They didn't want to be part of the Union no more because they were worried that once Abraham Lincoln got elected, he was going to push to limit or end slavery. Why would that have been, though? What was his perspective? Does anybody know? To be clear, he gave a damn about the actual slaves. He did not care about freeing those people, our people. But he had a vested interest in limiting the institution of slavery. Does anybody know why? All right, we got an answer. Since it says certain people getting too much money. Who else want to give it a shot? Okay, she specified the South was getting too much money. Who else? Who else want to give it a shot on why Abraham Lincoln had a vested interest in limiting or ending the institution of slavery? Shalom, Yabashim Shabakata. Officer Urash Shamath is in the building. So, Officer Yagadar, that is absolutely true. His primary goal was to preserve the Union. Now, I think I know what statement you're referencing when he said he was quoting it saying, if I could free none of the slaves and preserve the Union, I would. If I could free some of them and preserve the Union, I would. And if I could free all of them and preserve the Union, I would. That is true. My understanding is that statement, though, was made after the war had started. All right. Now, when you say the South wanted credit for slaves from voting, that is also a true statement. But a lot of it was economic. A lot of it was economic because the South, as my rib said, the South was getting a whole lot of money. The South was you think about all of this labor, all of this free labor that no one had to pay for, and they were producing and exporting farming, goods, primarily, obviously, we know cotton. But think about how much money they were raking in. And what they wanted to do really was extend it and expand it further to the West Coast. That would have given the South even more of a stronghold from an economic perspective. And at the time, similar to how it is today, you kind of have the South from a political perspective for Edomites. You have the South that's pretty much on one side, and the North is pretty much on the other. So it began to, from a political perspective, you could see it, the North kind of seeing, hey, we're going to lose some of this control we have. We're gonna not have a chance politically and economically if we allow this to continue, because they're getting so much money off of slaves. So it was about slaves, but it wasn't about slaves. It was about what the institution of slavery, what position, the subordinate position it would have put the North in. So that's why when it says stopping the machine, exactly. And that was a big push politically as Abraham Lincoln was running. Salaki. no, we good to go. Okay. So when he won, that's when the southern states was like, whoa, this is about to go left. Because he's won. He already said what he's gonna do. You know, we're gonna back out of the union. Now we're no longer gonna be part of this country, right? And that happened. Obviously, you had the Civil War happen, and they set up an entirely new government. So, who can tell me? Because I just found this out today, and I knew it, but I didn't know it. Because they had a president and a vice president that was the head of the Confederacy. Does anybody know who the president of the Confederacy was? Kamala, and if you know it, give me the name. All right. Who else? Who else want to give it a shot? Give Officer Yakadar a hand. He's exactly right. Jefferson Davis was the president of the Confederacy. Now, I don't know. Obviously, listen. Officer Yakadar is sharp as a tack. I didn't know that until today when I was finishing up my preparation for this class. When I realized that we've been driving up and down Jeff Davis Highway all these years, and what it then represented, it's this oppressor is wicked it's just terrible. But yeah, so that was, they had a whole government set up. Now they're at war, North versus South, right? So when you look into and that was, I believe, in 1861 is when the war started. When you look into how the war was going for the North, they were doing pretty bad. They were not doing that well, but not that far-fetched. They're coming down into the southern states. They're not used to this area. They're not used to, the terrain and all that good stuff, but they weren't doing good. So then it got to the point where, nope, I'm not going to tell you all that. So they weren't doing that good. So given the scenario that we're talking about, what might have been a strategic move to make to get things to shift and swing in your direction? Given what we're talking about, the North is down here in the South. We're the top of the South. The North is down here in the South and further down, obviously, going to war. Absolutely. Give my red hand. Use slaves to fight in your war. Now, the North is the one who needed help, though. They don't have slaves. So what do? What do? Give Officer Yagadar a hand. They promised freedom. They said, hey, if you go. Now, what they first did, before they quote unquote promised freedom, they enacted a law, statute, whatever it is, that basically said manipulate them into thinking it would help them. Exactly. They enacted this law that basically said any property that the Confederate soldiers used against the Union, by definition, was property that was being used against, the federal government, so it was able to be seized. And of course, the first thing they started, quote unquote, seizing was us, because we were being forced to fight for the Confederate. They were using, again, the most valuable commodity in this country historically has been our labor in some way, shape, or form. And they were using us to fight against the North. So exactly, we were property. Even the North viewed us as property to be taken when it was convenient, when it was necessary, right? So that went on for a while. They were still doing combat, right? So then you have Abraham Lincoln draft up. Sis, absolutely. They deceived the slaves, absolutely. Because most of them did, they just went to the other side and fought. Now, at the time, then when they were first doing it, I mean, sure, it was. You could say there was a vested interest in fighting against the Confederacy from a slave's perspective. You could also say, I mean, if they just wanted to not fight, that wasn't a choice. So they were kept as property and given guns, and now you're going to fight on our side. But the idea that you were going to walk away from this whole thing, no, that's not going to happen. But it sounds better to say, oh, we gave them freedom, and then they wanted to fight. So it just sounds better. But that's what this oppressor does. He writes and rewrites history to make himself look as positive as possible. But that was going on. So then, again, from a strategic perspective, now Lincoln decided to draft. Somebody give it to me. Since a political banter, right? Just back and forth, absolutely. But even with obtaining and acquiring this property that then we're going to fight for the Union, still wasn't doing that great. So Lincoln drafted what? Who can tell me? Everybody knows what this document was. Who can tell me? To the sister of hand, right? The Emancipation Proclamation, right? The Emancipation Proclamation came out, and it was January. He signed it into law, January 1st, 1863. Now, what's ironic when you go and do the research? Not ironic. It actually makes perfect sense. These people are terrible. But he drafted it initially like 6 months before. And one of his advisors was like, hold on. I get where you're trying to go, but we're losing a little too many battles right now. And if we do this now, it's going to look like we're asking for their help, meaning us. It's going to look like we need them to win this war. And we shouldn't do that. So they waited like 6 months until they could rack up a couple wins. And then they put it out there. And what has that done? Subtle things like that. How do we look at Abraham Lincoln? Most of us. Nobody in ISUPK. But most of our people, how do we look at Abraham Lincoln? Sister hand. Who else want to chime in? Absolutely. We look at him as a black savior, like he saved us. Who else? Officer Yagadar, White Jesus #2. Exactly. Give Trooper Kazaki a hand. Exactly. They see him as a hero. Most of our people look at Abraham Lincoln as a hero, like he was really the great white hope to us, which is absolute nonsense. We were again pawns in a political and game and a warfare game. And fine, you know what? We're not winning these battles as much. I'm gonna write this Emancipation Proclamation and free all of them. Now, what's ironic? So I'm gonna read this right quick. As I pull, again, it's not ironic. People are wicked, but I'm gonna read this right quick. You look at the transcript. I'm gonna just read a section of the transcript from the Emancipation Proclamation, and it reads weird. So y'all just rock with me for me. Says this is an order and designate as the designate as the states and part of the states wherein the people thereof respectively are in this day in rebellion against the United States, the following, right? So what it's saying, what it's presenting is, listen, these states that I'm about to name are in rebellion against the United States. And here are those states. It says Arkansas, Texas, Louisiana. Then it has except all these other spots in Louisiana, right? Because certain parts of the state, it said this doesn't apply. Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia. It gave a few spots in Virginia that don't apply, right? And it said accepted parts for the present left precisely as of this proclamation were not issued. It says then, and by virtue of power for the purpose of the aforesaid, meaning all of the states and areas that were just named, I do order and declare that all persons held as slaves within said designated states and parts of states are and henceforth shall be, and that the executive government of the United States, including the military, naval authorities thereof, will recognize and maintain the freedom of said persons. I know it reads crazy, but essentially what it's saying is, hey, if some states rebelling against the United States, or some areas rebelling against the United States, and here they are, and all those that I just talked about, those slaves are now free. Shalom, y'all been showing Officer Krishan in the building. So, my question to you all, we'll see if y'all caught it, because I know that reads crazy. Did that free the slaves? Kind of like. Okay. No. How would they know? That's valid. That's valid. I appreciate it. Who else? Who else want to chime in? The way this was read, did it free the slaves? Okay. Officer Yagadar says all right. Officer Yagadar, what can you explain to me why you say la? If anybody says Khan, explain, give me some perspective on what your thought pattern is too. Rib said, how would they know? And that's fair. That's absolutely valid. I mean, you got to think about it. It was a crime at the time to even be able to read. So who was gonna and what incentive did anybody who owned slaves have to tell them that they were free? Let me see. It's just Rick said it was just talk. There was no enforcement of it. Not quite. Not quite, but you're not totally off either. You're not totally off either. Let's see what the sister says. It says Abraham Lincoln was not a hero. Abraham Lincoln and the rest of them working with him took advantage of the slaves. Not know that didn't free the slaves. They was all still going through oppression. Well said, sis. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Obviously, y'all get done. I'm hoping you're still with me. I'm gonna keep it moving though. So ask y'all another question. Were there any slaves anywhere other than those states that were listed? Now, this listed several, right? We got Arkansas, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia. Does anybody know of any other states? Any other states that had slaves? My rep said la. Meaning no, there were no other states. If that means no, there were no other states, sis, that is actually incorrect. There were other states that had slaves. Does anybody know of any other states that had slaves? Oh, okay. Slocky, no sweat. Yeah, he's saying there was. All right. Give the sister a hand. Kentucky was definitely one of them. Anybody else know of any states that had slaves? Who else want to give it a shot? Okay, so it said Georgia and Texas. Okay, they did have slaves, but they were also included in the Emancipation Proclamation. So I'm asking now about any states that wasn't mentioned in the Emancipation Proclamation, but did have. You were correct when you said Kentucky, because that was one of the states. All right. The whole South, I can't remember. One state, no problem, no sweat. I'm gonna say it over. All right, the ones that were in the Emancipation Proclamation was Arkansas, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia. Officer Yagadar says if they were free, they could have left free. Exactly. If that was actually the case, they could have left free. But we know that that was not the case. Absolutely not. Officer Yagadar says Pennsylvania and Ohio. But I'm going to give it to y'all for time's sake, all right? There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 states. Delaware, Maryland, Kentucky, as the sister said, Missouri, and West Virginia. All right? So the common perception is that Emancipation Proclamation freed the slaves. Well, if you were in Maryland, were you free? If you were in Delaware, were you free? Kentucky, Missouri, West Virginia, were you free? This Emancipation Proclamation went out there. Think about what it meant. Correct. Maria said, exactly. You were not free. Think about if you were in Maryland, border state to Virginia. You're on a plantation. And you hear them talking about how the slaves in the Confederacy, all those states that pulled out from the Union. Oh, Abraham Lincoln just freed all them. Think about what that does mentally to somebody, right? I mean, not let alone, you're a slave anyway. But now we're talking about people, some slaves are getting set free, supposedly. Yeah, but not you. And the ones that were supposedly set free, they kind of still under the, not even kind of, they're still on the plantations, and we hope they tell them. We'll see what happens. But that's the proof right there that, again, there was no interest in freeing the slaves necessarily. This was a political move. This was an economic move. This was a strategic move. I'm losing this war, and I need to do something to shift the momentum to my side. So now I'll put this out there, and then all these battles we have, I'll be able to tell these slaves or whoever I can come in contact with to get this word out that they're actually free. Right, they were free next door. Exactly. So now that that's done, right? Everybody free. Of course, we know that's not the case. So who can explain to me briefly, obviously, what Juneteenth represents? What Juneteenth represents? Because we, being primarily Judites, it's not what I was looking for. Salaki, my rib said nothing. Let me see. Happy to still be a slave day. Y'all on it tonight. All right, but historically, what does Juneteenth, what is it supposed to represent? Because us as primarily, like I said, primarily Judites, we, people have been celebrating Juneteenth, for hundreds of years. So, what does it represent? I mean, because it does represent something, They say it represents something anyway. Then maybe that's how I should phrase it. What do they say it represents? What does the vast majority of our people feel like it represents? Sulaki, I think that's supposed to be so-called. The so-called signing of the Emancipation Proclamation for slaves. Actually, no. It's not the acknowledgement of the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation. Who else knows? Or who knows, I should say. Who want to give it a shot? Okay. The rebel officer Yagadar says it was actually the day we was freed from, I believe it means slavery, sis. All right. She's closer to it. That's what is said. So this is the idea. Obviously, like y'all was saying, if the slaves were really free, they could have just walked away, but we know that didn't happen. Obviously, it was a function of, how are they going to go about enforcing it? How are you going to get the word out? How is it going to just be okay for all these people to walk away, right? So what they found was now the Emancipation Proclamation was signed in January of. All right, Officer Yagadar says when slaves got the news. That is definitely more in line. You and your rib are definitely more in line. So what happened was it was signed in January of 1863. June 19th of 1865, which is 2.5 years later. Shalom, y'all remember? Shalom, Yahweh Shem Shabbat. Shemaga Bar in the building. So yeah, 2.5 years later, the Union Army rolls into Galveston, Texas. Galveston, Texas is like a port city. They roll in there, and the what they say is the story. Salaki, is that up? Salaki, one second. Salaki. So yeah, the Union Army rolls into Galveston, Texas, a port city. Now this is the narrative that is presented, right? They say that the Union Army came in and these people didn't even know that the Emancipation Proclamation had happened 2.5 years ago. So they went in and the general read this statement. I think it was like a 5-part statement. Get a rib of Officer Yagadar hand. She says it was when we was told we was free, but couldn't leave the plantation. I'm about to read something to y'all. She is absolutely accurate. Give her a hand. So yeah, they rolled in, and this is the narrative they say. They say they rolled in, these people didn't even know they were free. So they read this statement and they let everybody know, and like 250,000 slaves were freed, is what they said. Now, again, didn't happen like that. Because to the sister's point, now there's a 5-part statement that was read. I'm only going to read statement 3 because I think y'all will get it, and it's really what matters for what we're talking about right now. It says the people of Texas are informed. This is what this statement was read. The people of Texas are informed that, in accordance with the proclamation from the Executive of the United States, meaning the Emancipation Proclamation, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor. That right there is weird. That doesn't make any sense. You tell me I'm free. I'm no longer their slave. Now I'm their employee. How is that supposed to work? I mean, to me, that's like saying, you know what, sis, I know he had you trapped up and was raping you every day. You're free, and now you're his wife. Like, that makes no sense. But it goes on and says, the freed men are advised to remain at their present homes and work for wages They are informed that they are not allowed, they are informed that they will not be allowed to collect at military posts, and that they will be, and that they will not be supported in idleness either there or elsewhere. Sister said, now you have to work off a debt. Right. It was almost like that. You're no longer a slave, but now you gotta stay here and work. And if you're found to be quote unquote idle anywhere, then that's not, you're not allowed to do that. Don't come to the military post. Don't come to the bases no more. Why? We needed y'all at one point. It's been 2.5 years. It's been 2.5 years. The momentum of the war had already shifted. They were winning battles after battles. The North was. We no longer need you. So you know what? Now you're an employee. You can stay here. Don't come to the base. Don't come to the military post. Then when we needed you, everybody was welcome. When we needed the manpower, sure, y'all gonna be free. Come on over here. Now that we don't need you anymore, you free. Just stay there and keep working. What? You free, but let me catch you not working. Exactly. And give back them boots we lent you to know. Exactly. Let me catch you not working. You free though. Absolute pawns. Now, it's lucky. The sister says they lied, deceived, manipulate, used, and viciously disrespected our people. She's absolutely right. Well said, sis. Well said. Now, again, keep this in perspective. The Emancipation Proclamation was about states that were those specific states, right? But what's generally told is, well, that was the last, the day that the last slaves were free. It's an absolute lie. In those states, Delaware, Maryland, Kentucky, Missouri, West Virginia, a lot of those states didn't free their slaves until like another 6 months. When the 13th Amendment, who's familiar with the 13th Amendment? Kind of lie. All right, I know what. Who else? Kind of lie. Who's familiar with the 13th Amendment? Well, obviously, y'all can die a hand. He says the 13th Amendment says you're free until you break a law, then you're an official slave again. He's absolutely right. So I'm going to read it real quick. This is how the 13th Amendment is worded. This was an amendment to the Constitution. So all these other things were proclamations and hey, this is how we're going to operate now. But then they put this in the actual Constitution, which again, our people believe these are the things, these are the steps that led to our so-called freedom. The 13th Amendment reads, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Which, to Officer Yagadar's point, When it says, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, as long as you've been convicted of a crime, you can now be a slave. The sister says the 13th Amendment is so fake. Our people are not free and don't have no rights. She's absolutely right. Give her a hand. Give her a hand. Absolutely. Absolutely. But this is the last holdout for the official chattel slavery. This was the last thing. And once that was passed, once it was passed as an amendment, it became official for the country. Now, what's also good to know is not all states, so the process for that is each state up to a certain number had to ratify that they were okay with making that change to the Constitution. Once you get to a certain number, I can't remember what number it is, but once you get to a certain number, then it becomes, okay, the majority has agreed. Well, a lot of states didn't. A lot of states continued to vote against it. One of them was Mississippi. I don't think Mississippi, they ratified it in like 2013. It's like 10 years ago before they ratified the 13th Amendment. And these are good things for our people to know. This country's greatest commodity is our labor. And they do whatever they can to get as much of it as they can. I was listening to one of the captains the other day, and he said, people are so, amazed at how America is a superpower. Well, why wouldn't you be? You had 300 years, 300 to 400 years of free labor. Absolute zero, virtually zero overhead. You don't have any expenses. All you got to do is make money. And this country did that for 300 to 400 years. Yeah, you became a superpower. Because you had the Most High's people in captivity. That's why this is the second Egypt. It's not difficult to understand. But that's the narrative. So now all the slaves are freed, and that's when our people started celebrating Juneteenth. So now we fast forward a little bit. Now we have this official holiday. Rev said they're still getting it because we continue to be put in slavery. Oh, I mean prison. Exactly. That's what we're being put in now. Prison. We talked about it before. Once the 13th Amendment was there, once the Emancipation Proclamation was there, and all of that, then it became, okay, well, now we got to come up with all these laws. Now we got to come up with black codes. Now we got to have these sundown communities where you better get out of town before the sun goes down. Now we have all of these things that everyone, no, not everyone, that this oppressor conveniently overlooks. This oppressor, even now, we are arrested at a much higher rate. We are policed at a much higher rate. Our communities are poor. That is purposeful. Our communities are completely drugged out. That is purposeful. Our communities have violence, have drug dealers, have drug addicted people, and all this oppressor looks at everyone as exactly the same, a criminal. This oppressor looks at our communities all the same as a haven for criminals in their mind. And because of that, in their mind, everybody who's in our communities are criminals. And we're all meant to be in jail. Why? Because we're all slaves. And we're still slaves. Right. Sister said we're in prison longer. Exactly. We get arrested at a higher rate. We get longer time. We get all of that. Because we are still in slavery. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. If you're not in the truth, you're not in the ISUPK, you don't get this type of understanding. We are still slaves. We get it so twisted because there's, a certain amount of us, a certain number of us do well. So then that makes it easier for people to ignore the conditions that our people are in. If you're doing a little bit better than the next brother, then it's easy for our people to just ignore the slums and the horrific conditions that our people live in. It makes it easy for our people to ignore the fact that we are locked up so much more. And if we read these things, if we understood what the history of how this country came along and our place in it, and the fact that, don't get me wrong, we went out yesterday. A few of us brothers went out. We went to Portsmouth, Virginia. They had a Juneteenth event. We went out to hand out some flyers, talk to some people. And honestly, it was not a bad event. Like, it was kind of cool to see all your people around. There was music playing. It was a good vibe. A lot of vendors out there. It wasn't a bad vibe. No, at the same time, there was so much wickedness out there. There was so much wickedness out there. It was like seeing what could be, but definitely was not. You had people on, because they had a stage up there, they dancing and they, doing their little stomping in their Greek, outfits and stuff. And it's like that, that is a completely different culture. We only took that culture on because real Greeks, i.e. Esau and our oppressor, didn't want us in that. So what did we decide? Well, we're going to do our own thing, but we didn't do our own thing. We just copied their stuff. And then now it's all, this is our black fraternity. But that's a Greek culture. So it's right. Absolutely blind to the truth. And that's why we go out and teach the way we do. So we can try to wake up as many of our brothers and sisters as we can. But that's also why, like I said in the title, the gift destroyeth the heart. There's Ecclesiastes 7:7. It comes from the Ecclesiastes 7:7. It says, surely oppression maketh the wise man mad, and a gift destroyeth the heart. Of course, oppression makes us mad. It should. It's going to. That's what it says in the Bible. But so now think about when Juneteenth was signed into law, into federal law. Who knows when that was? Give me the year. Who remembers when that was? Who remembers the year that Juneteenth was made a federal law? Give obviously y'all can die hand. June of 2021. Who can tell me why? Who can give me some perspective? Now, this has been something that's been celebrated in a lot of black communities for, like I said, it was close to 150 years. I think it was over 150 years by the time this was signed into law. Who has some perspective on maybe why that was done? Why it was done when it was done? To appease us, all right. Second dumbest thing we did. But I want to see if y'all can get it. What was happening specifically at that time? We wanted them to accept us. That's true. That's true. That's been our problem for a long time, wanting them to accept us. Okay, police brutality. That's true. That's true. I was hoping somebody was going to get it. Money grab to bounce back from COVID. Maybe. Not saying it's wrong. Not saying it's wrong. It's not where I'm going. So I want y'all to walk back with me for a second. All right. Because right before this was signed into law, a lot had gone on with protests and marches, and there was talk that people had been looting, and that black folks have been looting. And we know that's not true. That was some oppressors that were going to these rallies and these protests and looting with masks on and things of that nature. We don't do that kind of stuff. I mean, when we loot, we just go. It's not planned. But so she said, America trying to make themselves look good. All right. Black Lives Matter. Okay. I'm gonna help y'all out. George Floyd. George Floyd died in May of 2020. And for about a year, good 6 months, there were a ton of protests. There was all of this movement. There was all of this uproar, and everybody was out marching. And then they started taking down monuments, especially in Richmond. They're starting to remove monuments, and then there was all this talk about, oh, you're erasing history, and there was some tension in this country behind that was sparked in a lot of ways by George Floyd's death. And to appease us, because if you think about it, there were a lot of legislation that has passed recently. You had Asians get legislation about not being victims of hate crime. I think you got anti-Semitic stuff for so-called Jewish people. You got the LGBT, the alphabet community. They get stuff. There was some kind of law that was passed, to make sure that they're not focused on and violence isn't perpetrated against them. You have all these things. We got a holiday. We got a damn holiday. Right, exactly. Your sister hand changing names of roads and schools. They're doing all that. We got a holiday. We got a holiday that we were actually already, a lot of communities were already celebrating anyway. Now, what it did do, if you work for the federal government, it was a paid holiday off. Okay, I got another day off. If I work for the government. Now, Virginia, what did I have it here? Virginia actually moved a little quicker than the federal government. Virginia made it a paid holiday for state employees in October of 2020. But again, that was the height of everything happening. That's when there was tons of marches going on in downtown Richmond. Let's give them a holiday. Let's give them a gift to appease them, as one of the sisters said. To appease them so that they'll maybe calm down. Now, what's something that is like ironic and backwards and don't make like any logical sense, given the fact that this is a paid holiday, right? what's a, let's see if y'all catch it. I want to give it to you. What's something about the holiday, something about the parameters of it that's just backwards? Who can guess? There's something very backwards about how this is implemented. I mean, we live in this wicked country, so it's not a lot that can be done. But it's something that's real backwards about the implementation, if that's a word, I think, of Juneteenth as a holiday. Who gets to celebrate the holiday? Who gets to be off on Juneteenth? Is it just the black people who work for the federal government or the state government? Everyone. That can't be right. That can't be right. It can't be that our oppressor is celebrating us being free when we weren't really free at the time, and we still didn't get free after that. We're still not free today. It's for the children of the slave and the slave master. Right. How backwards is that? How backwards is that? Right. The oppressor be having barbecues too now. I've even seen banners with Edomites on saying recognize Juneteenth. Right. Right. They call it Freedom Day. We're just celebrating freedom. No one specific freedom. We're just, it's just freedom. We're not where, I mean, it's not like a particular people were in captivity and kind of were, and the oppression was let up maybe slightly. It's not about a particular people. It's just about freedom. It's potato salad with raisins all over the internet. Absolutely. Give Officer Yagadar a hand. It's exactly what it is. It's complete nonsense. I mean, if you want to impress me, you know what? Hey, just black folks get it off. Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians. That should have just been our day. And all y'all go to work. We're going to make this an official holiday and everybody gets. How does the oppressor get off work? Get a vacation day celebrating the freedom of a slave? But this is how they can twist it. This is how they can twist it. And you hear people say it all the time. Work and don't. Right. Get a sister and let them work and don't get paid for that day. If you want to even it out a little bit, matter of fact, give me their pay for that day. That's how we should even that out a little bit. You want to impress me. Complete nonsense. But what they can say is, hey, listen. Like I said, yeah. Who do they say freed the slaves? Who do they say freed the slaves? In a manner such that, this is a great individual. Look what he did. We were talking about it earlier. Jesus 2.0. Right. Right. Jesus 2.0. As Officer Yakadar said. They say Abraham Lincoln freed the slave. Well, who gave you Juneteenth? Does anybody remember? Well, it was not Barack. This was just a few years ago. 2 years ago, in fact. Give Officer Yakadar a hand. Joe Biden. Sleepy Joe, right. He's almost a dementia Joe at this point. Right. But that's what's going to be the historical context. Look at what they did. Right, Barack 2.0. Exactly. That's what's going to be the historical context. But look at what they did. Look at the shiny object. Look over here. See? Right, Con. Barack wasn't going to do nothing for us. You are absolutely right. That's what a lot of people don't understand. Barack is a Hamite. Barack is not one of us. That brother is that man is a Hamite. He has no ties to anything or any of the oppression that our people have experienced in this country. The closest tie he might have is his wife, which is terrible. But that man is an absolute Hamite and was raised by the oppressor. He has he does not have an understanding. He does not have a tie to what our people go through here. So yes, he was not going to do anything for us, and he didn't. He did plenty for the alphabet community. Did plenty for the alphabet community. Now, to be fair, Joe ain't give us nothing either. He gave us nothing. He gave the country a holiday. Well, damn, I guess I'm glad we had slavery so we could get a holiday later. Sister says, yes, the world seen what happened to George Floyd and other black people. Those white folks scared because they know they messed up and they wanted to make Juneteenth a holiday. Exactly. You're absolutely right, sister. Time is about up. Right. Joe signed that Asian bill, though. Right. And it's so ironic because everything was going on. People talking about how we need structural change and, Black Lives Matter. We need to stop being killed and so on and so forth. No problem. We hear y'all. Here's a day off. For just us? No, everybody. Everybody's going to get this day off. Right. And these type of things, Rev said, don't forget we love Clinton because he played sax even though he made plenty of us slaves. Exactly. Black people love to claim Clinton because he played the sax and smoked weed. Like that's our real culture. It's not. It's absolutely not. But this is why we're not supposed to be choosing our own leaders. We're terrible at it. We are absolutely terrible at it. Right. He implemented the 3 strikes law. Let me ask y'all this. See if y'all know that. He implemented the law. Who wrote it? Versus we don't understand the truth, which is why we embrace these things. Exactly. Shalom, Yahweh Shemar Latham Bashem Shai, Sister Tawana in the building. Absolutely right. Give Officer Yagadar a hand. Joe Biden wrote the 3 strikes law. Our people don't understand. This is why we don't need to be choosing our own leaders, because we're terrible at it. Right. Listen, Officer Yagadar is reading my mind tonight. While Joe Biden was writing the 3 strikes law, Bill Clinton was implementing it, Hillary was running around calling us super predators, which is why we needed the law. That's what the whole narrative was. 10 years go by, you give us a black-faced president that's on that party, we forget all about it. Now we want Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden as our leaders, and we showed up to vote for them. Us as black folks. Nobody in here did. Nobody in this organization did. It's absolute terrible. But this is what they do. When you think about that 3 strikes law, matter of fact, that's going to take me right into my next. Where was I? Daniel chapter 8 and verse 25. It says, and through his policy, also he shall cause craft to prosper in his land. Through his policies and laws, he benefits. He makes sure he benefits. This oppressor benefits through his policies and laws. A 3 strikes law is, again, a catalyst to ensure slavery. Obviously, Yarash Ahmad said Juneteenth and all these federal holidays deal with money. Khan. Absolutely right. They are all money grabs. They are all money grabs. But that's what this country is. That's what this kingdom is. It is about money. It's about making money at any cost as much as they can. The scripture goes on, it says, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. He magnifies himself. This oppressor thinks that he is the greatest thing on the earth. And by peace, he shall destroy many. Now, giving us a holiday, how many people were destroyed by that? Listen, did y'all hear about the shooting it was right outside of Chicago, I think it was, Juneteenth celebration, 22 people shot, 1 brother dead. Let's see. Officer Yagadar said, that's crazy. Then the rappers helped with Vote or Die campaign. Exactly. You had the rappers come in, encouraging everybody to vote because they don't know. They have no idea. And then our people, by and large, looking up to them because we don't have any, they don't understand Commander General High here. We don't have any role models. We look at entertainers as our role models. So then they use that to usher us in to vote for people that we have no business doing because we don't have any idea what's going on. It says American prison system began in 1891 after slavery was abolished. Exactly. Between the prison system and the slave patrols that eventually turned into the police department, we are still in slavery. Every Israelite buying shirts that rep this food. Oh yeah, everybody walking around with Juneteenth shirts. Because you ain't gonna tell us we're not gonna shine and floss any given chance we can. Officer Rashomar says every state gets $666 million each, just so companies can give you the option to get off. So, Lockie, I'm not sure what you mean, sir. Just so companies can give you the option to get off. I'm not sure what that means, sir. Maybe somebody else can call it if y'all can explain it to me. Let's see. Officer Yagadar said it was 200,000 people locked up in 1972. There are 2 million plus now. Exactly. This is not by accident. This is purposeful. so they can continue the institution of slavery under their laws. Sister say all about money and those presidents are related to Queen Elizabeth. I have heard that. I'm not familiar with that, but I have heard that. I've heard supposedly there's a I don't know if it's true or a conspiracy theory, but that every president in some way, shape, or form has been related to Queen Elizabeth. Yeah, I don't know how true that is, but I have heard that. There's over 100 injured in shootings over the past weekend and 12 dead. I did see that. Yeah, and that's just in the U.S. Yep. Juneteenth is official. Now it's catching bodies. Right. And when you look at that community outside of Chicago, it was all black people. I don't know if all of those shootings across the country were, because, you know, Esau loves his guns and he loves to shoot up stuff. Khan. They're just all devils. Exactly. That is the truth of the matter. That is the absolute truth of the matter. And our people are completely deceived. We don't understand that they're giving us these trinkets, these gifts to destroy us. They're destroying us, but doing it in a peaceful, so-called peaceful manner. That's just like the idea that a lot of communities, black communities, feel like, oh, we need the police. We need more police. Because in our minds, when we're in these communities, that's what the police are supposed to bring. Supposed to bring peace, as it said. So some people had this perspective that no, there need to be even more of them. So you can just lock more of us up, like we don't get it. We don't understand. That's why I need to come to the Israelite School and Universal Practical Knowledge, so you can get this truth. Celebrating these holidays, do it every time. Exactly. And again, now, like I said, we went out there the other day and handed out some flyers and stuff. The vibe was not bad. But we are not following the law, statutes, and commandments as a whole. So at some point, somebody's going to come through and shoot the whole thing up. We're out there. I mean, it's some of every wicked thing out there. Pride Month shirts. Sodomites out there, hardly got on no clothes. I mean, it was again, the majority of the vibe was okay. We do everything. Our communities are our people are into everything wicked. And we put it on Front Street, on stage. And we celebrate it. And when you do that, at some point, we are cursed as a people, and that curse is going to catch up with us. States are getting $666 million to give you the option to have a day off. I got you. All right. A day off for the federal holiday called Juneteenth. That's a lot of money. Absolutely. Khan. Do you know what that would do for a community? Have the day off. That is a very interesting number. Imagine white people getting $666 million a day off, and a day off for your freedom. Exactly. Right. They get, and it's almost similar to, you hear people talk about reparations after slavery. Oh, reparations were paid. Reparations were paid to slave owners. Somebody got some money when they ended slavery because somebody was done a wrong. Somebody was, somebody was injured by slavery, or at least by the ending of it. So they paid slave owners. Right. Y'all can start reading my mind tonight. Just like they paid slave owners. Right. Reparations were paid. Because when you lose your property, you need to be made whole. Compensation plan. Absolute wickedness. Absolute wickedness. Let me keep going with the scripture. It says, he shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand. Who's the prince of princes in this scripture? Christ. He's going to be broken. We just got to come back to these laws, statutes, and commandments. We got a part to play in Christ coming back. That's something else the Christian church does not teach. The Christian church does not teach that. Christian church is, oh, Jesus coming back. Jesus coming back. No man knows when. True. That's true. But we got a part to play in that. We got to come back to the law, statutes, and commandments. Get back under the protection of the Most High. He says they have a sinister plot behind Juneteenth like other holidays. Yes, we're going to hear about black people getting shot up on Juneteenth Day. Exactly. This stuff is absolutely wicked. And it's an absolute shiny trinket. It's a gift. It's a gift to make people feel better about the oppression that they're in. Because we're good every time. Well, not every time, but oftentimes. When brothers get shot, sisters get unalived, unarmed by this wicked oppressor and his police force. Sure, we are good at being reactionary. We are good at walking and marching and making statements and speeches and all that stuff. And then we just die down and go back into our lull until it happens again. And then we cry out for, reform, and we do all of that until that dies out. And we go back in our lull until it happens again. Now, George Floyd's death was a much larger response. No problem. What did we get? A day off. We got a day off. Salaki, there are red, white, and blue Juneteenth advertisements. What in the world? Right. Because Juneteenth is an American holiday. Juneteenth is the oppressor celebrating, not keeping us in chattel slavery. I mean, think about how wicked you have to be to pat yourself on the back for deciding to, not even deciding to, but because you stopped doing this wicked thing. You stopped raping women, so now you should. I'm gonna celebrate myself. I feel like I've done a good thing. I'm no longer being a serial killer, so I need to praise myself because I've done a good thing by not doing that anymore. It says he shall magnify himself in his heart. That's what that is. How much do you? What kind of twisted mentality do you have to think and have of yourself to celebrate? You no longer oppressing a people as much. Because let's be clear, once that was done, again, all these laws got put into place, Jim Crow, now we locking everybody up at a higher rate, fast forward, drugs, all in our communities, pushed in there on purpose. But let's celebrate the fact that y'all ain't, this chattel slavery doesn't go on anymore. And this is what we have to realize. Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians are still in slavery in this country. It's just a different kind. They continue to do it completely on purpose. It's not by accident. That's the way this country is designed. Because it doesn't function outside of them making a ton of money. Since a lot of white people think that slavery was a good thing for us and them, and then they always put themselves on the back for civilizing me. Oh, I got you. Right. What they do is, in their mind, you hear white people say, well, we took them out of Africa. I'm sure they don't want to be living in Africa anymore. Like we should be happy. Like we should be happy that you completely unalived our ancestors, that you raped our women, that you broke up our families, that you used our men as bucks and bred them like they like our people were livestock. We should be happy about that. Because look where we are now. Again, how twisted do you have to be in your mind to fully know how Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans are treated in this country every day and have the audacity to say, well, you should be happy. We brought you to civilization. You all were savages. You should be happy. But that's what this oppressor is. That's who this oppressor is. Right. We're not even from Africa. Exactly. We're not Africans. We are not Africans. We are Israelites. Right. Juneteenth belongs to white people now. Exactly. And this is where we get it. This is why it says, Salaki says, and through his policy, also he shall cause craft to prosper in his land. These are policies that were put in place. 150 years, Black communities were celebrating Juneteenth. Not all of them, but certain Black communities were doing it. Everything goes left for George Floyd. There's all this uproar. You know what? Let me get him up. You heard me write this holiday. And you know what? Everybody gets out. This is now an American holiday. Now you're going to have people going forward. White folks are going to be so excited for Juneteenth. Can you hear him now? You know it's a 3-day weekend. They're going to be going to the beach. They're going to be doing everything, celebrating Juneteenth. Like the sister said earlier, they're going to be having cookouts. I believe in Galveston, Texas, or in some places in Texas, they have a tradition of red velvet cake. I think it's strawberry soda or something like that. Watch. Well, red velvet cake is going to sell out. And it's going to be on every white family's table. Juneteenth going forward. And they're going to pat themselves on the back. Because look at the good thing we did. Look at the good thing we did by eventually freeing the slaves. Took us 2-3 years, a war, but we did a great thing. We should be proud of ourselves. Let's see. Catch up with something. Sister says, so true. We need to separate ourselves from those white people. Exactly. I don't trust none of them. They're devils. Exactly. And sis, how you separate yourself is exactly what you're doing. You continue coming into class. You start following the law, statutes, and commandments. You get in this school, lock yourself in, and continue to get this knowledge. That is exactly how you separate us. How we separate ourselves from this oppressor. Absolutely, sis. Officer Ross says, white people are getting paid on Juneteenth while we are poor, killing each other, robbing each other, catching charges, and being thrown right back in slavery. Exactly. Con. That's exactly what's happening. But white people are getting paid to have a holiday for Juneteenth. And on that same day, our communities are shooting everything, unaliving people going to the hospital. But they're getting paid. Pride Month took over Juneteenth and Father's Day. It's another good point. Not that we celebrate any of them, right? Because these are Esau's holidays. But it's so ironic that a couple years after they made the Black holiday official. Now you got Pride Month. And Pride Month, to Iwan's point, takes over everything. Takes over everything. Pride Month, that alphabet community has, it's amazing. But then again, it's not, because that's Esau's culture. It's a well-known, established fact that the Greeks and Romans were, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this or not, but I'm going to say it, and if I get checked on it, that's fine. They were pedophiles and homosexuals. Absolutely. It's a well-known, established fact that they instituted, in large part, monogamy. So they would have one wife and be sleeping with a whole lot of boys. This is their culture. And that's partly why it has no problem making these leaps and bounds. It takes over. And it has taken over, like I want to say, Juneteenth and Father's Day. Fathers are not proud. Exactly. When the Dollar Tree started selling Juneteenth decor, I knew it was over then, right? Get a sister hand. Between Dollar Tree and who was it? In Walmart, it was selling like Juneteenth ice cream. I mean, just completely wicked and all about money. All about money. It's just said Bud Light, right? The if y'all don't know what she's talking about, there was a Bud Light, which is, that's Esau's like primary. Budweiser in general is Esau's primary beer. They did a deal, some kind of promotional deal with a transgender, and they were in an uproar. But what I haven't heard is how it affected their sales. And so that, I think, remains to be seen, and I don't think it's going to affect their sales at all. I think they're going to talk a little trash about it, and then they're going to keep cracking them cans, opening them bottles, and because, again, it sounds good, but they don't have that big a problem with the alphabet community. It just sounds good. It sounds like something to say. But let's be honest. I mean, the only reason it sounds like something to say from their perspective is because what's in the Bible. Because the Bible calls it an abomination. And they attempt to act like Salaki. Yeah, it's because of what's in the Bible, and they act like they want to follow the Bible. They've taken the scriptures and twisted them all up. So they can't just ignore it, although they can and they do. It just sounds good to say no. We're against that. Let me see. Without being separate, our oppressors can take it over, no matter what Black people do. Exactly. Con. This is why we are meant to be separate, because no matter what we do, when we try to join to these other nations, we end up on the bottom. It was predicted in Salakia. It was prophesied in the Bible, and it happens over and over and over again. We attempt to do something by ourselves, but ultimately, we always end up want to bring some other nation in, and then we end up on the bottom of it. And that's what's going to happen with Juneteenth. The whole narrative is going to be twisted. The truth about it is already not out there. The reality is most people think, well, that was the last day that the slaves were freed and so on and so forth. It's not. The slaves weren't officially freed until like another 6 months. This is all because of integration. Exactly. Because if we had not integrated, then we could teach the truth of this stuff. We could remind our children the truth of this stuff. We have to do it now we have to take extra effort to do it. But if we were in our communities educating our children ourselves, then we would have a different culture. We would be set apart. We would be separate from these folks. That's what every other culture comes over here and does. You don't see a lot of East Indian children in public schools. You don't see a lot of Asian children in public schools. You don't see a lot of African children in public schools because they homeschool their children. They do other things. We decided we wanted to join with this oppressor. And now we're on the bottom of our societies and our communities because of it. The only way out is separation. And turn back to the Most High in this one body in the UPK. Right. That's the only way. What we have to do is come back to these laws, statutes, and commandments in the ISUPK under command of Juneteenth. Then we are one body. We are one body in here. We teach the same thing. We have this, we have the same, the same. We are one body. We teach the same. We talk the same. All of that. Pederasty was started by the free Greeks. The 300 were lovers. Exactly. These things are well-known facts. Boosted. I'm not sure what that means. It's like, let's see what sister says. Sister says, before you know it, Juneteenth's flag will be red, white, and blue, just like the American flag. They got the 4th of July, and I'm not surprised about Juneteenth. Well, now, technically, the 4th of July is absolutely their holiday that they should celebrate. That's their freedom. That's absolutely their freedom. They want us to believe that Juneteenth was our freedom, when it absolutely was not. Nobody should be celebrating, no Black, Hispanic, or Native Indian should be celebrating any type of freedom in this country. To do so means you completely don't understand the state that our people are in. To do so means you'd rather have some enjoyable, you want to go watch the fireworks to have some fun, rather than be concerned about your people. To do so means that those 85 children who were locked up in dog cages, you don't care about them. To do so meaning these children out here who are being locked up because drugs are being pushed into the neighborhood and they're starting them so young. Means you don't care about them. The state that our communities are in between the drugs and the violence and the unaliving, you don't care about them. Because you want to celebrate, you want to go see some fireworks, and you want to, again, eventually you want to eat some red velvet cake, and you want to do all this nonsense. And we are in absolute hell. Because we shouldn't be celebrating anything other than our high holy days, but our people are so blind they don't even know them. Give the sister a hand. The bulk of our people are in Christianity, and Christianity speaks nothing about the high holy days. Christianity tells you, listen, WWJD, that's what they used to say more so. I don't know if they say it too much now. The whole, what would Jesus do? Well, just read the Bible. You find out what Jesus would do. You find out that Jesus celebrated Passover. No Christian church is going to tell you to celebrate Passover. This is the wickedness that the Christian church is. This is the wickedness that this country is. This is the wickedness that this oppressor, embodies. And we have to make sure we know these things so that we don't allow ourselves to get as blinded by a nice little holiday and a day off, like everybody in the world. Right, sis. Exactly. All right. And with that, say shalom, Yahweh Shem Shabrakatah, Salakia. Shalom, Yahweh Shem Shabrakatham to the brothers. Yahweh Shemor Alathan by Hashem Yahweh Shai to the sisters. One more comment. Let me see what Yadidar he said. He said that's anti-Semitic. They would never tell us to celebrate Passover. You know what? That's a great point. Now, mind you, it's in the Bible though. This is how twisted Christian church is. And that's why we need to get our brothers up out of there. Brothers and sisters. Everybody needs to come to the ISUPK. And with that, I say shalom, class dismissed.